Good afternoon, everybody. Our keynote speaker today is Jamison Green. Jamison is very well known, I think, to many of you, if not all of you, and he is currently the president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. It's quite exciting. He's not the first trans man to have that position, but it's quite exciting to have a trans man in that position. He's an internationally known leader in transgender health, health policy, law, education. He's spoken all around the world. Many of you will know his book, his prize-winning book, Becoming a Visible Man, which I have the pleasure of bringing forward to. And he's done a lot of work on policy, which has impacted governments and businesses around the world. He reminded me last night that he's probably not anymore the most well-known trans man in the world. That may go to Chaz Bono, but I think that's his own competition. Jamison will speak on triumphs and challenges for transgender people around the world. Please join me in welcoming Jamison.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks very much. I have asthma right now, and it's messing up my voice. And I may have to cough now and then, and my voice may do weird things, but I will try to stay with you for the duration. Right into the mic. Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm really happy to be in Canada. I think it's lovely here, and it's very interesting to be speaking to a very much more international audience than I usually get in the United States. It's a dismal situation in the United States that probably fewer than 10% of the citizens have passports, so they never go anywhere. So they don't know often very much, and our news is also really poor in terms of global coverage, really poor. So it's hard for Americans to appreciate often the things that people are going through in other countries or the accomplishments that people make in other countries. I mean, by hard, I mean difficult in the sense that they have no perspective, but also difficult in the sense that people think that the United States is this, place gilded by Trump gold everywhere, and it's not. For trans people in the U.S., it's often living in a third world country, and many global organizations don't count the U.S. as part of the world. They don't, because it's just seen as well, the U.S. does their thing and we just ignore them and we go on. And so funders who deal with global issues don't pay any attention to activists in the U.S. And so people can't get funded to do various things. And you don't see very many U.S.-based activists in the global forums. It's just a handful. And I think it's really a shame because, I don't know, I like to travel. So I've met so many amazing people. I've been so fortunate to be able to travel around the world, many countries, and meet trans people and business people and government people and academics and all this kind of jazz. And it's just been an amazing life, which I never, ever expected when I transitioned. I thought I would just, change my sex and go home and mow my lawn. I thought nothing was going to change. It was no big deal. So but in my travels, actually, I'll tell you something right now. First, the first time I traveled to Europe after my transition, which I started in 1988, it was in the 90s. I think it was about 93, and I was already running FTM International out of San Francisco, which was the largest support and information group for trans men in the world. We were very small still in the early 90s. I took over in 1991. We had 200 members at that point, but in many countries. And I wrote to everybody in Europe and said, I'm coming to Europe, and I'd love to meet with you. If you would like to meet with me, let me know. Write back, send me a note and, say what city you're in and a cafe where we can meet, and I'll come and meet you. Only 2 people responded to that. And they both said, when I met with them separately in different cities, why do you want to talk to me? And I said, well, I want to learn what it's like in your country. What is it like for trans people to get services or to keep a job or to get your documents changed or, all the things that we have to struggle with? What's it like? Oh, well, I don't know. It was so flat and so held in, these responses. And people were almost, it was as if they were almost ashamed to admit that they were trans. So there wasn't some kind of a sense of being engaged in a movement, because there was no movement at that time. I remember the first time I went to Germany and met with trans people there, they were very, very upset with the term transgender because they didn't understand it. There was no translation. Their gender and sex meant the same thing to them. And so, what are you talking about? And they were very, very angry. 2 years later, I was back again, and everybody was using the term. And I wasn't trying to drive that. I was just trying to listen to people and to open things up and to get people to think about what it was that we need as a community. Are we a community? I actually don't think we really are a community yet. I think we have a long way to go before we actually are a community, but I think we're getting there. I think we're learning a lot more, and as more and more people come forward, we will actually have, I think, a better chance of getting everyone's needs met. So, challenges and triumphs around the world. Well, I guess triumphs come first. That's the way you wrote it? Okay. So, triumphs. We have some amazing triumphs that are going on. And one is, in some countries, we are getting rid of gender. We're getting rid of gender markers. People are having the ability, like in Argentina, to go to the courthouse or whatever administration building they have and change their documents with no justification, no letter, no doctor's stamp of approval, no authority other than their own autonomy, which I think is marvelous. It's all about, congratulations to the activists in Argentina. Right on, thank you. I wasn't there, but I've never been to Argentina. I hope to go there soon. But I do know those activists, and I have talked to them numerous times, and they're really, really intense about making sure that not only do they get what they need, but that other people get what they need as well. So that's a really, really valuable feature. Malta is another country where things have changed dramatically, that trans people are much more welcome in the social fabric, and they can identify themselves any way they want. India has a way of identifying yourself as other, which many people think is adequate for them. I think they feel that that's an advancement. I think that that's not necessarily the greatest way to go, but language is really, really important in how we frame our identities and how we expect to fit into the fabric of society. And so I worry that by having a carve-out that says other, that makes it easy for people to other you. It makes it easy for people to say, okay, now we know who all those people are. Let's just take them and put them over here. And that could be dangerous down the road. So, but, far be it from me to dictate other people's language. And if they're happy with that's fine. And what the most important thing is that it shows that things can change. And that is probably the most important factor in making sure that we are moving forward. Keep things changing. So, challenges that are still present. In Malaysia, people who cross-dress are basically criminalized. So trans women who are, in many cases, doing sex work, in many cases, they have no intention of transitioning completely. I hate to say the word completely. I didn't mean it. They're not going to do the whole routine that people have, or that doctors have envisioned for us, which is fine. But what happens is they get rounded up, they get taken to jail, they get their heads shaved, they get raped and beaten in jail, and they have criminal records, and they often don't get out for a long, long time. And it's a really horrible thing. So one of the things that WPATH has done in response to that, which just seems kind of feeble in a way, but it's actually important. We wrote a paper, basically, that's a declaration that says that we're urging governments to decriminalize cross-dressing. And basically, it's a matter of getting people off of the notion that how you dress is somehow indicative of your social status, and that your social status is somehow indicative of how you should be treated. And how you should be treated is somehow indicative of somebody else's power. These kinds of arrangements have to change in our societies in order for trans people to be equal citizens, equal human beings. I got involved in healthcare access because I feel that access to healthcare means you're a human being. And when we don't have access to healthcare, we are not treated as human beings. We are not equal human beings. And so I've felt that was an avenue, at least in the framework of the United States healthcare system. It was an avenue to get into the concept of civil rights. We don't have human rights in the United States. We have civil rights. But that's another long topic. When people say healthcare is a human right, or water is a human right, or whatever the things that they're saying in the United States, government goes, fine, whatever, because we don't have human rights. It's not a concept that you deal with in the US. And it upsets me when government officials use that term, especially like President Obama, who's a constitutional law professor, when he says something about human rights. In the context of the United States, we just don't have that. And that's one of the reasons why we are slow to sign international agreements about human rights at the UN. And we're making a little progress in that direction, though. Actually, Secretary Clinton did some good work in that regard during her term as Secretary of State. But it's not human rights are not a concept that's well understood in the US. And I think we need to go there really, really fast. It's something that if you can accept that someone else is a human being, it's much more difficult to abuse them. And it's very easy to abuse somebody who you don't see as your equal or as a human being at all. So this is where we have to go. And the other kinds of challenges that we have, apart from the old style of exuding power over people based on sexism, based on social advantage or disadvantage, those things have to change. And to do that for everybody, it's not just for trans people, but for everyone, we need to, again, reframe what it means to be a human being. And that is something that I think trans people have an incredible potential for getting people to understand what humanity really is. And there's opportunity in that space because nobody's really doing it yet. And I think we have, from our experience, our incredible experience of gender variance, of perspective shift, of the kinds of transitions that many of us go through, are very, very powerful experiences that, if properly conveyed, can really get people who don't experience those things to understand something about themselves. It's a tricky thing to do. It's a difficult thing to explain or even talk about, but I'm hoping that you are sort of getting a feeling of what I'm trying to get at, that we have to get underneath people's skin. We have to get under our own skin. And that transitional thing that has to do with the body and the body changing and what happens with your own perception as your body changes and how other people are perceiving you as your body changes, if your body does that, or if you change your clothes, if you rearrange yourself in various ways. These are things that if we slow down and look very closely at what is going on inside us and move that consciousness out of the internal and into the external world, that we can impact people in many, many cultures, in many, many judicial frames, in many kinds of social situations. I think we can actually change the world. And that's really That's really what I'm about. That's what I want to do. I want to change the world. Thank you. What are you saying over there? It is a challenge to change the world. It is a challenge to change the world. So, we've had some triumphs around, really making progress, and we have a lot of challenges left. What can I say about this? I'd like to talk for a little bit about what the World Professional Association for Transgender Health has been doing, because I know people have long thought about the Harry Benjamin International Gender Dysphoria Association, which morphed itself into the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. People have long thought of that organization as an enemy, and have long thought of it as obsolete, ridiculous, obtuse, irrelevant, and it would be better if it just went away. But I don't think that's true, and that's why I got involved with the organization back in 1997 was the first time I went to a meeting, and it was held over here in Vancouver. And that was a really eye-opening experience, actually, to be around all these doctors, and many of them were obtuse. Dallas is here. Dallas and I were both there, and Ira Pauley came up to us and said, well, what's this? There's transsexual and there's transgender now, and what do you want us to call you? And we said, well, human beings would be nice. But actually, we ended up doing some research based on that about names that people use to refer to themselves, because we didn't want to tell the medical establishment what all trans people should be called. We want to hear from everybody. So in these fledgling days of the internet, we put out a survey and got back so many responses about what people wanted, what terms people wanted used for themselves. And in 2001, we wrote up a paper about that survey, and I presented it in 2001 at the conference in Galveston, Texas. And at that moment, and there were about 400 doctors in the room, there were a few activists, I'd say probably 24 people who were activists and not, professional psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors. But something happened in that moment that for the whole rest of the conference, and my paper was presented in the very first session. And it was a plenary session, so everyone was in the room. And for the rest of the next 4 days, every time, and this was when we didn't have PowerPoint. People used those overhead slide things, where you wrote on them on these sheets of plastic and put it on the projector. And doctors had edited their presentations. They had done things like scratch out the quotation marks around pronouns, like he or she, and they had scratched those out. They had used, instead of transsexual man, for what we would call a trans woman, they had crossed out man and written woman, And then they'd say, is Jamison here? Is Jamison here? Is this okay if I say this? I mean, really, it was bizarre. It was really, really strange. So that year, somebody said to me, you should run for the board because you should get on the board, and then because you want to be president of this organization someday and change the world. So I said, I don't know about that. It'd be fun to be president and change the world. That'd be good, but I don't want to be on the board right now. I got a lot of stuff going on. Nobody ever wins the first time you're on the ballot. So just, put your name on, give people a chance to get to know you. You have your little promo speech and stuff, and then, in the next election, a few years down the road, you can run again, and then you might get some votes. So I said, all right, fine. Put my name on the ballot. I got elected. So, thank you. So that was actually 2003, and that was my first 4-year term on the board began at that point. And for the first 4 years, nobody listened to me at all on the board. Not a peep. If I would speak during a meeting, they would all go, and then pretend like I hadn't spoken, and then go on with what they were saying before. I mean, it was really awful. And I think that they were afraid of me to a certain extent, because I know this actually because before I even became a member of the organization, I know that there was a big debate over whether or not I was qualified to be a voting member, and that there were people on the board who argued against my validity, and that one of them had said that I shouldn't be allowed because I have too much power. I thought that was amazing, that they perceived, and this was like in the 90s still, that they would perceive that I had too much political power and that I would be a threat to the organization. I thought that was really stunning. Why would they think that? All I'm interested in is making things better for people. I'm not interested in power. I'm not interested in what looks like the trappings of success. I'm interested in getting things done. I could see that this organization needed to be more efficient. I could see that this organization needed to take itself more seriously, because the need for what the organization does was much greater than the organization actually recognized. And so that's one of the reasons I got involved. I wanted to be on the committee that revised the standards of care. I wanted to talk with them about what kind of positions they would take in legal cases if there were an opportunity to make a statement that would potentially sway a court. And I wanted to empower the people who were there. I wanted to empower the mental health providers to stop thinking of themselves as gatekeepers and start thinking of themselves as helpers. Thank you. And I kept telling them, in fact, that all they need to do to change that dynamic is stop themselves. Somebody said to me, well, we're tired of being perceived as gatekeepers. And I said, well, then don't be. And they went, oh. It's so obvious. You just do what you want, do what you know is right. If you do what you know is right, things work out. That's my theory. It's not always the smoothest, but it's in the long term it works out that way. So anyway, for the first 4 years of my board participation, I was ignored, essentially. And then I was reelected. I should also point out that every time I was elected, first to the board, which was twice, and then as president, someone in the higher up hierarchy within WPATH said to me, "You know we lost members because you were elected." Every single time. I would like to point out now that during my presidential term, our membership has tripled. Yes. No. I don't know. Maybe they self-selected. She says, "I think you probably got rid of a few bad eggs," and I'm thinking, we didn't do anything deliberately. I think people may have self-selected, which is fine. Actually, every time this person said to me, we lost members because you were elected, I would say, well, that's too bad for them, because we're going to do great things, and they're going to miss the boat. And that's what's happening. So I actually always ran on a sort of business platform, in the sense that I really did want to see the organization be more successful. I wanted to see it be more efficient. I wanted to see it be more responsive to its members, who are professionals, but also in being responsive to its members, it can be more responsive to the constituents that the members serve, which are trans people. I wanted to raise that consciousness. Thank you. I wanted to raise that consciousness in those people, that this wasn't just a little country club thing where they met every couple of years and had this, presented their scientific papers, and then never said a peep for 2 years between meetings. There's too much need in the world for that. And they want to put out these standards of care, but they don't want to respond when they're challenged. They don't want to respond when someone needs help because of something that someone has some insurance company misinterprets something in the standards of care and denies service to someone. They appeal to WPATH. WPATH says, "Oh, well, they're wrong." That's not helpful. And someone said to me, "Well, every time somebody writes in and says that there's something that's wrong with the standards and I need this to be changed, I write an explanatory letter." And I said, the fact that you have to write an explanatory letter ever means the standards need to change. You shouldn't have to be writing explanatory letters. The standards should be clear. And it took a lot of effort. In fact, Aaron was a part of the effort to move things forward again, because he was on the committee that wrote the standards for version 6, which came out in 2001. And that was really, really helpful, because it did open the door to people thinking about how they might change things. So it was 10 years before the next standard was released, 2001 to 2011. And I finally got on the standards committee. They let me actually be one of the writers and sit down with the other 9 or 8 writers and debate what the content of the standards were. And the standards now are version 7, which came out in 2011, but were officially published in 2012. Version 7 is the most advanced and most liberal standard that we have. It still needs work. There's still a lot of areas where people are frightened of taking positions, and they're just worried about I suppose they're worried about malpractice suits and things like that. I mean, legitimate business concerns. But when you're talking about people's lives, you have to be conscious that it's not just about you as a gatekeeper. It's about those people's lives, about human rights, about autonomy, about self-determination. And making the kinds of shifts that we've been making since 2008, when they finally allowed me to write a clarification statement about medical necessity. That little 4-page document, which didn't say anything that wasn't already in the standards. It's just that the standards were organized in such a way that nobody could find the information. I just took out everything about medical necessity and laid it out and provided a couple of references, which is also something that the standards never contained until version 7. And that document has been used hundreds of times by lawyers around the world to help people get access to care. And that, even more than the standards themselves, has been crucial to getting people to be recognized as human beings, to have us recognized as people who deserve health care that meets our needs. We don't need somebody else's health care. We need our own health care. So that was one of the major accomplishments, was getting that done. And then they were so happy with that, in the 2008, the medical necessity statement, that they allowed me to start writing these other policy statements that we now have. And there are 4 or 5 of them out on the web now. There's the one against cross-dressing. There's one against enforced surgery or forced sterilization to validate identity. There's one, saying, no, you don't do that. Nobody should have to be sterilized or have an unwanted surgery in order to get their identity documents changed. And there's also a statement about depathologizing, de-psychopathologizing gender variance. And so those are available on the web for anybody to download and look at and take to whatever health administration or hospital or wherever you need to take it to get people to treat you better. And those things do help. It's not enough. We have to go farther. We have to do more. And actually, I keep looking over here and seeing Maria from Sweden and thinking, here's another really interesting triumph and challenge, and that relates to the structures of our lives. And that is, Sweden was the first country to have a law that said you can change your identity documents, but you had to be sterilized. And you had to have all this, you had to have various surgeries, and sterilization was an important feature of that. It was used actually in the language of the law. And it was, for many years, the activists in Sweden worked to try to get that changed. And I'm happy to say that I played a small part in that as well when I was at a meeting in Linköping. And there were some lawyers from the health ministry came, and they asked to sit down with me at lunch. And they said, well, we just don't know how we can change this law. And I said, well, it's very simple. You just write a new one. And they went, Oh. But just like the mental health people. Oh. So, but they said, well, how can we say that you don't have to be sterilized in order to, what would happen if a man became pregnant or, I said, yeah, what would happen? What do you think would happen? Does it scare you? So for me, it's often just that little poke, that shift in attention, that way of seeing things differently, that opening it up, getting people to realize that they don't have to be stuck in the paradigm that they imagine is reality, that they can be freer. It can work. Right now we're struggling in the United States with bathroom legislation. Oh my God. Nobody can go to the bathroom. There are probably 20 states that have bills before their legislatures right now that want to keep trans people from going to the bathroom. They say no one can go to the bathroom unless it's the bathroom that corresponds with their sex assigned at birth. Public restrooms. And I'm like, well, you can legislate that all you want, but how are you going to enforce that? Well, they say, well, we won't have to. We'll pay $2,000 bounty. So people, we'll have citizens arrests. If somebody catches, if you're a citizen and you catch a trans person in the bathroom, well, you just turn them in, and they'll have to pay you $2,000. That's actually been proposed. Yeah, it's horrible. It's really horrible. What people don't realize when they're writing this and trying to defend their women and children is what they're trying to do, is trans people have been going to the bathroom since the beginning of time. Trans people are already there. Why are you trying to keep them out? Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. But these are the kinds of things that we are dealing with around the world. And even in the third world country called United States of America. So, I guess what I'd like to do is open up for questions at this point. Is that okay with you? And I'm going to have Aaron moderate. If people want to ask questions, the microphones, come to the microphones, please. And Aaron will moderate that. But while everybody's getting themselves organized and thinking about that, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about what some of the other businessy changes I've been making at WPATH, which I think a lot of people don't even really know what's hit them yet. But one is I've divided the world up into regions. So the World Professional Association for Transgender Health is an overarching office that there's now a European, an EPATH, European Professional Association for Transgender Health. There's ANZPATH in Australia and New Zealand. They're going to start Asia Path pretty soon. There's CPATH, which is not an affiliate of WPATH, but CPATH for Canada. But we want to collaborate very closely with CPATH anyway, and that's fine. You guys don't have to be, we don't want to try to make anybody subservient in any way. What we're trying to do is, let me just say, we're also getting US path, but that won't be an obvious kind of thing, but it will be a structure within the organization that allows people in the various regions to deal with their regional issues that are different from other regional issues in their own way with support from the central office, but the central office isn't making all the policy decisions anymore. You can make policy decisions in your local arena with your local people. The standard of care will still be a collaborative document, it will be one document. When WPATH issues a policy statement, it will be from WPATH, and it may apply, hopefully it will apply globally, but it may apply just to something going on in the US, or it may apply just to something going on in Malaysia or China. You know, it's just, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we strengthen the brand of WPATH and we empower the regional areas, regional groups to do what needs to be done in their jurisdictions. And that we work together to make sure that everybody is working in the same direction. So that's something that is rolling out now. And another thing that I've done is change the dues structure so that people, doctors from countries where their economic system is so different than the US or North American, European, Western European systems, they can actually join and afford to join, and we can expand our global membership. And I've even said, you know, there are some countries where people should be able to join for free because their incomes are so low. They should be able to join for free. There's no reason why we can't support that. So that's rolling out. What else have I done? I divided the job of secretary and treasurer into two jobs. So the treasurer will be the treasurer, and the secretary will be someone who monitors the committees and keeps the committees focused on working together and getting things done. Because right now it's pretty, you know, nobody does much because everybody's just wondering what's going on because it's just difficult. It's difficult to manage an organization that is growing so much, so fast, and without any kind of central infrastructure. So that we're trying simultaneously to build the infrastructure. I moved our home office is now no longer in the University of Minnesota. It is in Chicago. We have professional management, professional association management, rather than an executive director who is a therapist and doing the executive director job in her spare time. And she did a marvelous job, but you can't grow an organization that way. And the other thing was she was given an instruction when she started. The instruction was, don't let the board spend any money. And you have to spend money to make money. That is true. And so another thing that people have been begging for WPATH to do for decades is to start a certification program so that more providers can be trained, can have the proper perspective, can understand the issues, can realize the networks that are available, and not be abusing trans people because they see a market opportunity. You know, they've got to be responsible to some values in treating trans people. And so they never wanted to do that because they said it could be too much liability or this and that. And I said, you know what, we're doing it now. Now that I'm president, we're starting a certification program, and people are eating it up. It's really, really having, that's one of the reasons our membership is growing, because people want to be certified. And you know, we're coming up with a way of they don't like the term grandfathering, but for lack of a better term, trying to come up with a way of grandfathering in people who've been doing this work for years and years and years. you don't have to take 1 million classes or anything. You can just take the test and qualify. So there will be a test, and this will be a rigorous program with respect to actual competencies that are needed to work in this field. So that's a big shift, and these are all changes that are going to be felt over the next several years that I think are going to result in some really serious improvements for trans people around the world in terms of access to care, in terms of decriminalization, in terms of ability to get identity documents, the kinds of everyday things that make our lives livable. That's what we need to work on. So yeah, let's have some questions. Thank you.